What's up, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the On Purpose podcast, where you know the deal. It's always our privilege and honor to show up and just be able to talk with you and to share thoughts and ideas and teach and learn from you, right? And be part of a group where people come together to actually have conversations and to listen and learn and not to talk just to be right and to point and counterpoint. So I want to thank you for living your life and creating space where that is the norm. And man, we can't do this without you. 5 years going strong. Things are going great for the podcast and for our community in general. And it's all because of you. So thank you so much for being here. This week I kind of wanted to follow up to last week's episode with our Never Say Someday crew, Stephen and Alexis, who, led our Baja Caravan. And I wanted to kind of explore a little more and share, I guess, a little more with you about the experience of actually traveling to Mexico and pulling our home, right? Our Airstream is our home. It's everything we own is our truck and our Airstream right now. So at first, that was a pretty daunting task. So I thought I would just share with you, like, kind of what we learned, the experience of it, and um, yeah, just kind of give you some additional information you may not know. So, first off, for those of you that are really new to the channel, Andrea and I sold our home and our business, uh, gosh, 4 years ago or 3 years ago now, 2021, June. So we've been living out of our Airstream full time since then. And each year, we spend the summers up in Wyoming. And then the winter, we go off and travel. We like to go see different stuff. So the first year we did Florida, which people told us not to do because it's super expensive, hard to get campgrounds and stuff. And honestly, that's just kind of how we live our lives. We do what we think we want to do, and we don't really follow everybody else's advice, especially, quite honestly, if they're not people that are doing what we're doing, right? Like if they're sitting on the sidelines giving us advice on what we should or shouldn't do, but as Theodore Roosevelt said, they're not in the arena, then the critic doesn't really count. So we did Florida, had a great time, learned a lot of stuff. The second year we did Mexico or New Mexico and Arizona, which was cool. And then this year we wanted to go somewhere warmer, and we met some friends that were heading to Baja, the peninsula, and we're like, let's jump in on that. So that's what we decided to do, and it was pretty interesting when we started telling people we were going to go spend the winter in Mexico. You can imagine the responses we got. Concerns about our safety, drug cartels, the corruption of the government, um, just all the stuff that a lot of times we think we know based on information we're given, but they're not really our experiences. And that's one of the things I love to challenge in life is let me experience it for myself, and then I'll tell you if what you told me is accurate or not accurate, right? If your experience, because the reality is we can both do the same thing and we're going to have totally different experiences with it. And it's not that I won't listen to reviews or input, but I'm going to try it myself and then I'll form an opinion from there. So regardless of what everybody told us, and how many people were like, oh, I would never do that. I would never tow my house. They're going to seize your stuff. Like, what about this and that? We are like, well, let's give it a shot. And we did, I think, play it smart. And Andrea hooked us up with a caravan. So we did the initial border crossing in a group, which I think there is, strength in numbers, especially when you're uncertain of the process. We had never done this before. So I didn't even know what questions to be asking. And I'm not fluent in Spanish. Um, so going with a group where I had more fluent speakers and people that had done this before was just a little bit comforting. And what I loved about it was the first 2 weeks of our trip was with them. And after that, it was kind of up to us what we wanted to do, if we wanted to come back to the States or stay longer. So it was to me, it was like a fail-safe plan, right? Like we had security, we had comfort. If we hated it, we could leave. If we felt unsafe, we could leave. And if we enjoyed it, we would have the confidence to continue on. So um, that was really kind of what drove us. And crossing the border was, for those of you who traveled internationally, border crossings are always, even whether you fly in and go through customs or you travel across, in a vehicle, it's always a little bit longer than you think it should be. It's a little bit stressful because they're trying to move people through. But I will tell you, showing up with eight uh, travel, RVs at the border crossing to Mexicali. I think the staff there was excited to get us out of traffic and through as we were to get through. So it was really not a big deal. Nor were most of the checkpoints with the military checkpoints in the middle of the roads. What we found, our experience was most of the time the young men and women that are serving in these roles, I don't even know how they get these jobs, if they're desirable or not, or if there's mandatory service. But what we found is most of the people there love just seeing what an Airstream was. I'm guessing they haven't seen a ton of them, but they would come in and they would take selfies with them of themselves in the Airstream. They would ask questions. The very first checkpoint we had at the border, our first inspection at the border, the young lady spent a ton of time just telling us how beautiful our home was, and it's weird, right? Because you're kind of in this stressful moment of crossing the border and everybody has guns and they're in military uniforms and a lot of them have face coverings. So it's kind of intimidating, but then you actually talk to them and like, your house is beautiful, she's telling me, and she's just in awe. And you're like, man, you're respectful. Like, you appreciate. It's weird in a moment of stress, in a moment of, oh my gosh, should I be doing this? Should I be here? What are they going to do? You learn to appreciate, like, man, my life is blessed, right? Like, she's looking at this thing, how beautiful our home is, and we're worried about just getting across the border. So I thought for me, that was just a super cool experience right at the beginning to set the mindset and the tone for the next, for us, which turned out to be 2.5 months we spent down in Baja, was appreciating all the small things, right? Appreciating all our small things that sometimes we overlook or take for granted, that people in other cultures who happen to just be born on the wrong side of an imaginary line we've created don't have access to. So crossing the border was not a crazy deal, especially once you be humbled that you're fortunate to be doing it, right? And that not everybody in the world gets this opportunity. So border crossing was good. Um, what we found culturally, it was the biggest difference for us was just remembering that you can't order water at restaurants, right? Like that was a big deal. And we're not big soda drinkers. So thankfully with the house, we have our own water filtration system. So in the house, we are good to go. But out in public, man, your go-to jam for us was Topo Chicos, right? We would order those. It's like a mineral water. They would throw some fruit in there for you and stuff. And it was just a great way to support them without having to drink soda all the time. And there's only so many cervezas and margaritas you want to drink. So Topo Chico was a great option. So if you're going down, I would make sure you have a note of like at restaurants when you're trying to figure out what you want to drink, just order a Topo Chico until you can figure it out from there. Language was another big one, right? So many people are like, oh, you don't speak Spanish. Like, how are you going to get through it? Here's what I'll tell you is my experience is just me. If you try to speak the language of the country you're in, they're usually going to work with you. They're going to appreciate that you've made an effort. And I loved it, right? I loved learning more Spanish than I knew. I loved like listening to what they were saying and asking them to tell me what did they just say so I could learn more stuff. And honestly, it was kind of fun if I only know two of the words that I needed to know and I threw in a couple English words and then they would look at me confused and they would come back with their two and my two and we would figure it out. And it's almost bonding, right? Like when somebody cares enough to talk to you that they're uncomfortable and they're willing to learn and step out and not, it's almost like not treat you like lesser if you just show up in a country and you refuse to learn the language. And that was probably one of the more disheartening things I saw there was so many travelers that refuse to speak Spanish or even try. And they almost, there was a couple times like one was at a propane station where this older gentleman, I don't want to say he bullied, but he was very, very rough and very aggressive in that he was going to speak English. And these poor folks that were trying to fill his propane tanks needed to find somebody that he could talk with because he had been coming down for years, he told me when I asked him later, but he just refuses to learn Spanish. And I think that's pretty arrogant. So I would tell you that if you want to go to Baja or you want to go anywhere, be humble about it, right? Like take some time, maybe learn a little bit of the language. You don't have to learn, the kids love butter like my sister was learning in her class, because that's really not going to help you anywhere, but learn some stuff and just be open to it. Remember that the whole point of traveling is to be open and to learn and to experience. And if you're going places with a closed mind of what you already know, quite honestly, if you want my opinion, stay home, right? Just stay where you are. You already know everything, so just stay there. But thankfully, that was very rare. Most most of the time, man, people were so nice, like so nice. The locals were amazing, and just coming down to where we were camped, if we were out in remote beaches or we were in town and selling their goods, and that's probably one of the things I loved in Mexico was the lack of bureaucracy to running a business, right? Like if you and your family make the best tamales in town, you don't need to go through a bunch of licensing and hoops and hurdles to create a tamale business. You literally just make tamales and sell them out in front of your house. And the thing that really I enjoyed was there was a couple really good taco stands that were only open until they sold out of tacos. Like they weren't going to be there all day, every day just to make more money. They made the tacos they wanted to sell. And then when they were out, they were out. And I loved that culture. I loved valuing, your time a little bit and some freedoms and other things you want to do besides working a little more than I see other places. So that was super cool. And it made you want to get there early, right? Like if you wanted those tacos, you had to get there before they're going to sell out, because about 3 o'clock they were shutting down after that work time rush. The other cultural thing that I really loved was if you did go out to dinner, they never rushed you from your table, right? Like they never brought you a check. Like you could sit there for hours and um just drink and have conversation and eat. And it's a treat for them to go out to dinner, right? It's a treat down there to have that family time, to have somebody wait on you. So unless you ask, la cuenta por favor, unless you ask for the ticket, unless you ask for it, they're going to let you sit there and never rush you out. And I thought, man, that's such a difference for me. And it required us to slow down, because a lot of times, at least in the US, you almost feel like, okay, let's finish up and get out of here. I know that they need to turn this table over. The waiter's waiting to get some more people. And there it was not that way. If you were there and you had the table, you stayed as long as you want. And it was really probably took about a month for us to like slow down from what we're used to. And our life already in the US is a little slower than a lot of people, the way we live. But even down there, we had to slow down another level to really get into Baja time, which was fantastic, right? You got to have more conversations at dinner. You got to eat slower, relax, enjoy the people that are coming and going around you. And what I like doing is, conversing with the waiters and waitresses and just kind of learning their story a little bit, and just letting them know we were thankful for them. Road conditions. If you're gonna drive Baja, man, just there's gonna be times you're gonna have to slow down. You're gonna have to dodge some potholes. It's not what you're used to up here. Um, but it's also not the end of the world, right? Like so many people are like, oh my gosh, I saw your video where the mountain pass was narrow and you were so close. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, it looks close. It's a video. But the reality is there's big trucks going by. There's all these other campers and they all made it. So you go slow, pay attention, you'll be fine. You can do it too. It wasn't crazy. Now, just you're gonna come back, you're gonna have to make some repairs probably. Like for us in the Airstream, we had so many rivets that got shook and loose and screws that came loose. But that's kind of why you live this life, right? It's kind of why we do what we do, is not to have everything in pristine condition, safe and sound like a showroom, but like to get out and live. So to us, it was a great trade-off to be able to camp beachfront on some of the most beautiful bays in the world, and to just experience that culture. Was, yeah, the roads aren't going to be the best, and travel slow and you'll be fine. Um, Another thing we probably wanted to share about this trip was, if you go down there, make sure you take some time. Not the best on the seasons, but I think it's like late January to early March is the whale calving and birthing season. get on one of those boats and get out and go check out the whales. Andrea and I did a tour out in Guerrero Negro. I forget what the bay is, California Bay maybe or something. But the day we went out, there was like 289 whales in the bay, and they're a super social creature that loves human interaction. So they come up and let you pet them, and it's one of the more humbling experiences you can have. It brings tears to your eyes when you see the little baby and he turns on his side. Mom lifts him up so that he can see the boat, and you're eye to eye with him and or her and just rubbing him. Um, so make sure you take time to get a whale watching tour. They're on both sides of the peninsula. You can do them out of like La Paz or Loreto or Guerrero Negro or Mag Bay, depending on which side of the peninsula you're on. Um, so do that, meet the locals, go to town, enjoy life. If you're driving a diesel, don't make the mistake I almost made and think that green pumps in Mexico are diesel, because they're not. In Mexico is black. So when I pulled up and was almost about to have the guy put the green in my truck, thankfully I double checked, because you don't pump your own gas in Mexico. It's kind of like this organ where they have attendants that pump the gas. So you pull up, make sure they zero out the meter, and then they fill you up. So if you're driving a diesel in Mexico, go to the lines with the black handles. That will be diesel. And I guess, man, what I tell you, if you think you want to go down there or you think you want to do anything in life, don't be afraid. What's the worst that can happen, right? Like, what's the worst that can happen? We had a great time. We met some awesome people in Mexico. We would definitely go back. Um, I don't know if I do it every year, just because it is kind of a long haul to get down there and it's rough on the roads and it takes some decompression for that. But maybe every other year, because the weather's unbelievable down there. Winter is fantastic. And some of the people we met, I would like to check in with them again and make sure their lives are going good and see how their stories unfolding, you know? So that's what I would tell you is no matter what you want to do in life, don't be afraid. It's a short ride, and every day you don't do what you want to do, the ride's getting shorter. So I hope you enjoy this episode. I know it's a little different than what we normally do, but I wanted to share just our experiences with Baja. And make sure you know that if you're on Instagram, go over to Alternate Roads. Andrea runs our travel channel there, and she's great at making content that documents this, and you'll see a lot more of our travels and the life of Mr. Otis, the Airstream, and all the things we're doing on the road. So thank you again for being part of the On Purpose podcast community. If you want to see the travel life, hop over to Alternate Roads. And man, summertime in the Northern Hemisphere. So let's get out and enjoy some summertime weather. Have a great week, everybody.